Welcome back, Focus Learners. So today's explainer is diving into a really fascinating architectural mystery. Have you ever looked up at a modern skyline or stared in awe at some massive ancient monument and wondered about the original blueprint behind it all? We walk past incredible feats of engineering and these towering obelisks in our cities every single day, and we often just completely take for granted the ancient DNA baked right into their designs. Well, today, we're going to uncover a profound ancient Egyptian concept called the Benben. It's an incredible journey. We're going from the muddy, mythological beginnings of time in ancient Egypt right up to the monumental structures piercing our skies today. We've got a lot of fantastic ground to cover, so let's get right into it.
So where did the iconic shape of the Egyptian pyramids actually come from? It's incredibly easy for us in the modern world to just look back and assume the pyramid shape was, well, just a practical, sturdy way for ancient engineers to stack heavy stones. And sure, a broad base and a narrow top, structurally sound, obviously. But the ancient Egyptians didn't just build things for mere pragmatism. To truly understand world-famous structures like the Great Pyramids, and honestly, even the towering obelisks sitting in major squares all across the globe today, we really need to reverse engineer their architectural origins. We have to look past the physical limestone and granite and dig deep into the creation myths that dictated exactly how this incredible civilization designed their world. Because for them, every angle, every single stone had a magical and mythological purpose.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture the Heliopolitan creation myth in your mind's eye for a second. The ancient Egyptians believed that before time even began, the universe was literally nothing but an endless, dark, chaotic expanse of primordial waters, which they called Nu. It was silent, still, infinite. And then, out of these dark, churning waters, a single solitary mound of earth miraculously arose. This was the Benben. The creator deity Atum was said to have settled right on this very mound to actually spark the creation of the world, and over time, the mythology states that this sacred mound transformed into a small pyramid. Think about that for a second. Mankind has essentially spent the last 5,000 years copying and perfecting a stylized mud pile that emerged from a mythical flood. But to them, this wasn't just a pile of dirt. It was the absolute ground zero of existence. It was the first solid ground, the very birthplace of light and life.
And this brilliantly illustrates the literal connection between that mythological mound and the physical world they built. Enter the pyramidion, which was also known in ancient Egyptian as the Benbenet. The Benbenet is the capstone. It's the supreme, uppermost block of a pyramid. Now, ancient builders didn't just cap their royal tombs to finish off the point and call it a day. No, they specifically designed these capstones to mimic that sacred Benben mound. These pyramidia were incredibly special objects. Usually they were highly polished or completely clad in reflective metals like electrum, which is an alloy of gold and silver, and they were designed to brightly shine in the sunlight. Imagine being a farmer miles away in the Nile Valley, right? You look out toward the desert and you see these glowing beacons catching the sun. They were taking a profound mythological concept and bringing it into brilliant physical reality.
Now, ancient Egypt was vast, and it certainly wasn't a monolith of thought. While the city of Heliopolis centered their creation myth around the sun god Atum and that pyramidal Benben mound, the city of Memphis had a completely different take. The Memphites venerated Tatenin. He was an earth god who represented the primeval mound not just as a geometric piece of land, but as the actual physical origin of all food, divine offerings, and bounty. Now, we aren't here to declare one myth more accurate than the other. Rather, this just shows us the rich diversity of ancient Egyptian religion. It shows how different regions adopted the exact same core idea of a first earth to fit their own local culture and agricultural needs. So for the people of Memphis, the mound meant sustenance, whereas for Heliopolis, it was all about the focal point of the sun's creation.
So, the crucial point is that the Benben wasn't just some abstract fairy tale floating around in the cultural ether. Physical, heavily carved Benben stones actually existed. The prototype stone sat right in the Temple of Ra at the ancient city of Heliopolis. Because it was shaped to represent the mound of creation, it was strategically placed in the temple courtyard to catch the absolute first rays of the morning sun. Just imagine the sheer visual power of that moment at dawn. You have the priests waiting in the dim light, watching as the sun breaches the horizon and perfectly strikes this sacred stone, essentially reenacting the moment of creation every single day. And this specific physical stone is thought to have served as the direct design prototype for all the massive obelisks and great pyramids that followed it. They were literally building monuments to catch the light.
Now, what's really interesting here is that this myth wasn't just about rocks and water. It had a living, breathing aspect to it as well. The Bennu.
The Bennu was a deeply revered bird deity at Heliopolis, and it was famously said to live perched right on top of the physical Benben stone, or sometimes resting in the branches of a holy willow tree nearby. It acted as a bridge between the heavens and the earth. Now, does a majestic, divine bird associated with the sun and a sacred stone sound a little familiar to you? Because it definitely should. The Bennu is widely considered by historians to be the primary inspiration for the famous Greek myth of the phoenix, the legendary bird of fire and rebirth. So this ancient Egyptian concept of daily solar rebirth eventually fluttered all the way across the Mediterranean and evolved into a myth that we literally still reference in pop culture today.
To really see how deeply woven this was into their culture, we can look to Egyptologist Barry Kemp, who proposes a truly brilliant linguistic connection. See, in ancient Egypt, words were considered to have immense magical power. Look at this breakdown. In their language, the word for the rising of the sun is Weben. The sacred stone that those rising rays hit is the Benben. And the divine bird living upon that stone, that's the Bennu. Do you hear the pattern there? It's ancient alliteration. They literally built an entire cohesive mythology connecting the sun, the stone, and the bird, all utilizing that root Ben sound. It's just incredible. Language, art, and architecture were all acting as one unified force to reinforce their faith and their understanding of the entire universe.
To truly feel the weight of this belief, let's read directly from their own history. In Utterance 600 of the ancient pyramid texts, it reads, "You rose up as the Benben in the mansion of the Bennu in Heliopolis." Think about the sheer gravity of those words for a second. The pyramid texts are among the oldest religious writings in the world. They consist of sacred spells inscribed deeply onto tomb walls to guide pharaohs safely into the afterlife. And right here, the creator god Atum himself is directly referred to as the mound. The creator and the creation point are completely fused into one entity. It really reinforces just how deeply ingrained this geometry was in their understanding of the cosmos. The king, the god, the sun, and the stone, they were all completely inseparable.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because this sacred shape definitely didn't remain static. It actually went on an incredible architectural journey over the centuries. In the earliest times, the Benben was stylized in two ways. It was either pointed and pyramidal, or sometimes it was a round-topped votive object. But by the time we reached the 5th dynasty, this shape had been formalized into a squat, thick obelisk, which was often featured in massive sun temples. Fast forward a bit to the Middle Kingdom, and it evolved into the tall, long, thin obelisk shape that we're probably most familiar with today. Interestingly enough, during the Amarna period, which was a time of massive religious upheaval under the pharaoh Akhenaten, the architecture shifted once again. Depictions found in tombs from that era, like the tomb of Panahesi, show the Benben as a large round-top stela resting upon a raised platform. So while the architectural trends shifted through the eras, the core sacred meaning of that original mount totally endured. Which brings us to a final, provocative question to leave you with. How many of our modern architectural marvels are secretly rooted in ancient, forgotten creation myths? Today we see towering obelisks in places like Washington, D.C., Paris, Rome, and London. And they usually look to us like standard, secular monuments, just projecting modern political power. But the next time you see that distinct pointed shape piercing the sky of a modern city, remember what you've learned today. You aren't just looking at a stack of stones or some feat of modern engineering. You are looking at a stylized ancient Egyptian creation myth. You are looking at the Benben. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the shapes of the world around you, and I'll see you next time.